Okay, hello and welcome. So, first time in Hong Kong for me today, and I've presented a few times at Pub Forum. In fact, the first time I presented on remote graphics, I think. I made a mistake the night before to watch you on Sean's video and thought, oh dear.
Sorry about
Some
that.
serious research. So anyway, so I'm a systems engineer, something of a generalist with a big passion for virtualization. I've got about 15 years of building servers, small storage environments to mid-sized storage environments, minor networking, but really just a server guy. So HP Blade centers, IBM servers, VMware, XenApp. So one passion for mine is System Center, and in particular System Center Virtual Machine Manager. So you might be wondering what's new in Virtual Machine Manager 2012 R2 when Ignite Microsoft has just announced 2016. And the reason is I'm a systems engineer, and the latest features were installed into updates rollup 6 only 2 weeks ago. So in the last 6 months, around about 100 new fixes and features have gone into this product. So I think that this product's got brand new features in it, and that's what I want to talk about. And if I can get through quick enough, I'll just quickly talk about the investment areas that Microsoft announced. So update rollup 6. So I don't know how many people here have used Virtual Machine Manager. Could I get a show of hands? Okay, so about half. Okay, I'm actually going to go through the deployment architecture so you can actually see what's in it. The product started in 2006 in beta. It had some very basic functionality. It's now a very big product with a lot of functionality. And I've got some points which I think a few people have touched on today around software-defined networking, software-defined storage, and a few other bits and pieces that I want to kind of cover. So I'll talk about the fabric, what's new. So pretty much my original reason for putting this product in is a compliance reason. So developers were putting a lot of VMs onto systems, they were getting access to a data center, and as a former VMware guy, I had access to the first version of vCenter and I already had an established way of working. So when I had Microsoft Virtual Server 2005 R2 being deployed by developers, they were putting live systems onto a network, whereas we had change control about putting new systems into a data center. So virtualization, I worked for the government, caused a huge problem. So it was completely uncompliant systems going in left, right, and center, and we didn't know if antivirus was installed. So I cracked a deal with some developers, and I put the beta version into production on the remit that it would be removed if the agent caused a problem, but I would then see every new VM being deployed by them. And I could just call and say, hey, you know, could you just email first? Or, so this is how I got into VMM. And I have a pet hate. If anyone knows what these are, this is Star Trek. These are tribbles, and they multiply by 12 every 10 hours. And in this photo, there's something like 1.7 million of them. And so I have a real problem with VM sprawl. It's not just about uncontrolled virtualization, it's just everything. It's spiraling costs, it's a security risk, so there's a few different bits and pieces. Yeah, okay, so there's a lot of different issues. So this is a Microsoft slide that I've taken. It covers, when I said there's a lot of features in this product, some people won't use any of these features, or some people won't use all of these features, but now people have got different reasons to put this product in. So I'm going to cover off some of these features, but really I'm going to start with a quick demo for those people who've not seen the console of this product. I'd like to show it to you. Okay, so workspace area, tree, navigation tree that changes as you click through the workspace areas. We kick off in the settings area. One of the first things about Virtual Machine Manager is that it can control your fabric, which means that you could do things like deploy SAN, LUNs, you could deploy new networks, you could deploy new software load balancers. So you have something called run as accounts. And what this allows you to do is to store the credentials for, say, a SAN, and then instead of giving a virtualization administrator those credentials and that password, you can delegate the permissions for them to deploy without them ever seeing that password. So it's same for Linux devices and Active Directory, you can delegate higher permissions. So it's going a bit faster than me. So effectively there's a jobs window, and this is what I was talking about before for compliance. this is showing me all the jobs running. So in a large environment when multiple administrators are making multiple changes, I can have a look at the history, and I can also have a look at the running jobs. Another point is that with those running jobs, if they stop, you get detailed error information. You can generally restart a lot of them. Okay, the library, here I'm just going to show you what the libraries are. This is where you store your templates, your ISOs, your virtual hard disks, drivers, and here the reason I'm showing this wizard is just to give you an idea of what the interface looks like. This is just adding a new library. Fairly straightforward, very wizard-driven description all over, allowing you to sort of navigate your way through quite easily. What I really want to show you is that this product has multiple ways you can do things. A lot of people like to do things in PowerShell. What this product allows you to do is to work through the wizard consoles, and then it will allow you to see the PowerShell commands that would be otherwise actioned and run. So see here we have a view script button. This is allowing you to run through this wizard. You don't have to complete it. So it's almost like the PowerShell what if command. You can get the PowerShell commands. Instead of having to look them up, you can just run through that wizard. You don't have to complete it, and then you can see all the PowerShell commands there. So it's PowerShell enabled for those administrators that like to use PowerShell. Learn PowerShell.
So what would be like the main things, the most important features that you cannot do using PowerShell to the Hyper-V cluster directly, and that you are able to do with VMM? I ask that because I deal a lot as well with smaller customers.
Yeah.
You know, like a 3-node cluster or 4-node cluster.
Yeah.
And for some of them, even though they are like non-profit and they get this for pretty much nothing,
yeah,
I always find, even like myself, honestly finding VMM a major pain in the butt.
Okay.
So for certain things, like to create a new VM, stuff like that in PowerShell, it's so much faster than through VMM that I'm just wondering, like, what cannot really be done that VMM can? What do I tell these people?
Okay, so I mean, first of all, you've got your auditing, which is running here. So you can do all these things through the HyperV Console. If you've got a cluster, you've got some VM management through the cluster, you can use PowerShell on HyperV, and yeah, you can do it a lot faster. Here it's really about, it's an enterprise product, and there is no small product to do this. There used to be a System Center product which was cut down, which was moldable System Center products, but now there's really just this. So compliance, update management as well. Through this you can do update management where you can create baselines, but I'll go into that in a little bit. So,
you mentioned the delegation of the SAN. Is that, let me use the term, is that a dynamic type of configuration that I delegate for the change control access to the SAN for this time window and then it expires, or do I delegate and have to come back and remove?
You would pretty much, okay, so I guess this is going ahead of some stuff that I'm going to cover
Okay, fair enough.
so I'll go back to it afterwards. When I get onto the dreaded word cloud and delegation, I'll talk about
Drinking game.
Okay, so the fabric, you can see here, let's get this started. The fabric section, it's got 3 core areas: servers, networking, and storage. Okay, VMs and services, you've got some overviews which give you a real quick view of performance. It's nothing too complex, it's just a brief overview of running performance statistics like network throughput, host performance. And if you look at the ribbon at the top here, you can do a lot of things from each of these areas. You get a new ribbon. And effectively, this is where you can create your new VMs, manage your VMs, turn them off, checkpoint them. Okay, that's all I really want to show you, just to show you that console and give you an idea of what it looks like. Okay, deployment. 2012 R2 has got quite a lot of components. It's a highly available product, so it scales out. You can kind of throw everything on one machine in your test environment, but if you're doing a production environment, I would start separating out things like SQL even in your test environment, so you get an idea of things like bandwidth into component. SQL Server, it supports SQL clustering, always on. The the VMM management server itself also supports clustering, so it's cluster aware. The library servers, you can deploy multiple library servers. So if you've got a WAN and you have a branch office, you can deploy a library server there, and you can fill that for the things we call equivalent objects. What that will allow you to do is allow for things like templates to deploy out from the local library server. So you can have multiple library servers. Next components, WSUS server. WSUS server is because it does compliance. So you can have your own virtualization administrator controlling what patches go onto your hosts. You can decide that. You can also control what patches go onto your dedicated file servers, if they are dedicated file servers, so running your library server and your management server. So instead of having WSUS pointing and the general server admin doing these WSUS updates, or the security department, you can own the virtualization. So really there is a useful way for the virtualization admin to manage compliance across all of their clusters and hosts. WDS server, the reason for that is that we can do bare metal deployments. So again, when I said I got into this for compliance, it's features like this that do interest me, is that if I'm going to deploy 100 hosts, by doing them bare metal with a predefined image, I know they're all going to be the same right from the onset. Whereas if you're building them by hand, you can do it very quickly, you can build a Windows server quickly, but it could go wrong. Especially if I built 100 servers, I think I'd get bored and maybe get one or two slightly different, let's be honest. Okay, and the last components here is the HyperV clusters and servers. You've got Xen servers and you've got VMware ESX servers. So basically Citrix Xen servers, you can manage them through this. You don't have all of the same functionality, but you have a lot of it. The only thing you need to do is put an integration pack, install that on the VMM server in order to control Xen servers. For ESX servers from VMware, you do need to install vCenter, so you need to install an agent. So HyperV Service need an agent, VMware server needs an agent, Xen servers don't need an agent. It's just one integration pack. Okay, the next pieces are the app controller server. Now this is something that I was using, I'm not using now, and I'll explain that why when I talk about some new features. This is a separate HTML5, no, Silverlight app, I believe, which allows you to point a web-based interface at up to 5 different VMM implementations. So you can create groups of users, delegated users, that could actually access resources across multiple VMM instances. It also allows you to see up to 20 Azure subscriptions, which means you can have a web-based console that allows you to see both your on-premise VMs and your Azure VMs. Okay, just put that one out. Ports, I think you can see them all there. So quite a few ports here. These are the main ones, but there are a few others. Ports you can actually edit during the installation of VMM. Okay. You can't see it, but down here is a link to all of the ports telling you which ones are customizable. And you know, for best practices, we usually say change the ports. There are some that you can't change, but quite a few can. So there's a link to that guide. It's quite lengthy, but it's in this presentation. So.
Perfect.
Okay, not bad. Yep.
So the next thing is, I mentioned before on the overview that there was some light monitoring and performance stats. In order to get full monitoring of your infrastructure for performance, you need to integrate another product called Microsoft Operations Manager. It's fairly straightforward to do. It used to be quite complex and used to be quite tricky. Now it's something that you just run a quick wizard, you need to install one console, and then it will talk to your Operations Manager server. So I'm just going to flick through. That is the steps to integrate the two products. It's just a click, click, click. You do have to have some management packs installed beforehand, which you just copy those over and import them into Operations Manager. Okay, they are listed on that first slide there as well in the wizard. And you can just see that that's your task running. And what this gives you is all the extra reporting. So things like SAN forecasting, performance reporting, host growth, host utilization growth. So all of those reports are in Operations Manager, but you get them when you integrate the two products. You also can do things like in maintenance. When you integrate these two products, you can do things like put Operations Manager into maintenance mode. If you maintain a cluster that would ordinarily be alerting someone, So maybe that cluster's got an operations manager agent on it, and security admin gets an email every time it's rebooted. From within this VMM console, you can now just put that cluster into maintenance, reboot the nodes, maybe do your patching, and it will also put operations manager into maintenance mode, which means the security guy won't get a email. Probably the security guy is the wrong person to use as a reference. Okay, so networking, I'm not going to go too far into this because there's actually an awful lot of networking capable in there. There's a lot of software-defined networking in there. It's been running for 3 or 4 years, so it's been evolved. 2012 is when it came out. 2012 Service Pack 1 had some major improvements, R2 had further improvements. Most of the improvements are network administrators saying this doesn't make sense, or people are already looking at other software-defined networking, so it's more about screens and terminology. So I have a bit of a bugbear about this. I've written some content on software-defined networking, and I have lunch with a Cisco CCIE on a regular basis, and he always says to me, what's wrong with network-defined networking? I'm like, well, you know, it's not the future. But you know, he wouldn't let me next to it. He wouldn't let me on his switches for his global organization, which is an interesting point. As a systems engineer, should I have designed the virtualization for a global organization? There isn't a software-defined networking course that I can take in an exam, so it's interesting that, you know, if you're going to do it all in virtualization. We've covered this topic, we've talked about it a lot today. So what this is useful for is for creating compliance again so that your switches are the same. So create a switch and deploy it to all of your hosts. Maybe you've got some hosts in a DMZ, get your switches all configured in there. You know, different areas, different departments, different types of hosts. So you can do a lot of the work, just do it once and then deploy. So when you do a bare metal deployment, if you've already got your local switches set up, they can be applied. Update compliance we talked about already. Bare metal deployment we talked about. Also includes scale out file service. So you can deploy your scale out file service from VMM. Why you would want to do that is you can run your VMs from Windows 2012 R2 over SMB3. So you can deploy your own storage. Multiple hypervisor so this has evolved. Right now, the most recent update has added ESX 5.5 for VMware.
But not 6.
Not 6.
Right.
Right. So it's also, yes, and it's partial functionality. There's a reasonable amount, but it's not everything that you would expect that's currently available in say 5.1. Obviously they're adding new features, so catch up time. Right, misplaced slide. Service templates. So I mentioned this product's quite big and it's got quite a lot of things in it. Service templates give you the ability to build out applications, so multi-tier applications. So if I want to build out, say, a Windows server, a SQL database, an IIS server, a network load balancer, create a highly scalable application, I can build all my templates, get all my virtual hard disks, all my profiles, everything ready, and then build an application using a designer like this. And that's just going to allow me to scale out an app very, very quickly. Again, I can't go into that in a short period of time, but it just shows that there's quite a lot of functionality within VMM. Okay, extensibility. And again, I just want to maybe touch on software-defined networking. This didn't used to be extensible. It now is. So the console plugins are there, and people are making them. Five9's got one for security. Cisco's got one for networking. HP's got one for storage. NetApp's got one for storage. Savage is, I think, for your virtual network visual representation, and I think there's a Microsoft one as well that I haven't installed, which is to help building visually your virtual networks. So a few new features, significantly SQL Server support for 2014 came out. That's sort of 3.5 months ago, that update rollout. And there's improved differencing disk options for VM role, and integrated storage area networking with remote replication for Azure site recovery. So you've got some availability, you've got the ability within Virtual Machine Manager to start pointing at your hosts and use Azure site recovery as well. So you can start protecting in the public cloud. Okay, so significant add is the ability to add the Azure subscription feature directly into this console. And so I thought that was quite interesting because when I showed the architecture diagram, I had a separate product. So if I wanted to see both, I had to go off and get a web server and install something else. So feedback to Microsoft, asked for this functionality. I didn't ask for it, but I would have. It is useful, and I'll just quickly show you a demo of that functionality. So that's my couple of machines in there. I've got a couple of Cassandra databases that I'm playing with. I'm playing with them on-premise and I'm playing with them in Azure because I wanted to learn about one sort of big data database and I picked Apache Cassandra. So it gives me limited functionality, but I can quickly RDP onto the server, I can stop it, I can start it. Now obviously if I've got too many machines running in Azure, I can start getting charged, so I've got a limited amount of free resources. So I'm working in this console regularly with my on-prem stuff, which I own all the servers, but I don't own the stuff in Azure and I have to pay. So if I fire up a big VM and test it and forget it, I may not see it. So yeah, that's one reason to have it, but I think going forwards, seeing your stuff here within both on-prem and the public cloud in the same console is how I want to work. I kind of coined a term many years ago, one console to rule them all, and it's kind of based on, if anyone remembers Hyena. Does anyone remember the product Hyena?
Yes.
Right, okay, so I've got a sort of short-term memory, so I'd open 20 applications. I opened DHCP Manager, Wins, DNS, all that stuff, forget which ones are open multiple copies, and that was Windows NT days. And so I wrote to Microsoft and I said, hey, do you remember Hyena? Why don't you get rid of some of these consoles? You've got a system set to this, system set to that. It's a lot of screens. I've got like 8 screens on my desk, and I'm wondering if you're going to roll anything else out because and so they have done a lot of work. They've done things like integrate the backup protection product with the operational management product, which is reducing one console for certain operators and things. So, and they're plugging features into this. So, one of the things that I think that there is now a answers online. I've got a link somewhere in this presentation deck so that you can request features, and effectively if you want a feature and no one else is asking for that feature, you need to start emailing people and say, hey, help me out here, bump up my feature request because I need 40 people to say it and then they'll start working on it. So, but they are making the features, and that's why I wanted to present VMM 2012 R2 because it's just had a load of features added to it, and the release cycle was kind of quarterly, which is pretty impressive considering how things were a couple of years ago. Okay, so I said that it was partial management. So these are the things that have been added: the ability to delete VMs, create resource pools, a bit of life cycle management, start, stop, shut down, repair, refresh, checkpoint, add the new vCenter 5.5 and its respective hosts, and some basic networking. What I did notice in one of the sessions at Ignite was that they were saying they want your feedback. They want your feedback for what functionality should be in VMM for 5.5 and 6. So if you think there's something there that you need, get on and drop them an email. There'll be a link in this presentation that you'll be able to follow and it'll take you straight to the relevant place. So ask for features and you may get them. So I've demoed that. That's some of the other features. Create VMs from templates. Yeah, I've covered these. Okay, so the next one. I'm not running the next version, it's 2016, but what I do like is the key investment areas. There's a really good one here, which you can't see. Things like simplified logical switch creation. So one thing that I heard a lot of is that the software-defined networking is complex. And it did change, and some of the terminology is changing, which does mean that it's quite a lot to get through. And if you're using network virtualization as well, then you've got another technology and a bunch of terminology to get through. So it can be quite heavy, and I think that the investment here in simplifying it, it's going to result in more accurately deployed software-defined networking, more consistent. Storage, QoS, I think that's a critical one. Storage is really, really important. So At the end of the day, there's a lot of investments in storage, and you mentioned earlier there's the guarded hosts, so managing the guarded hosts and guarded VMs. Okay, so this is where VMs can't leave a host. Okay, so most common problems, firewall ports. So you're managing libraries which are on Windows file servers, requires a port to be open, maybe someone comes and closes the port, so it applies a root policy to it, and suddenly your templates aren't deploying. Most often what I see is that some ports have changed. And it applies to all of the functions. Okay, a few more slides. Where to find out more? Okay, we've got a couple of duplicate slides. There's some resources. Feedback, as I said, user voice is what the new function is on the System Center website for you to report bugs and request features. There is a survival guide which has got links from bloggers, links from TechNet, links to videos, links to sessions on Channel 9. The survival guide is quite in depth. So there's, software-defined networking, there's 3 brilliant videos on it.
You'll give the slides after, will you?
Right. And I'll get rid of the duplicate ones before I upload. So here's a shameless plug. I've done some technical editing and some co-authoring on some books for System Center. Compliance management. Okay, so this one is going into System Center tools and Microsoft Compliance Security Manager. Really looking, and it goes right down from small businesses to global corporate enterprises. Cookbooks are really recipe-based, so you can just dive in, read a couple of pages, learn what you need to do, follow the steps. It's quite good. I did the technical editing on the reporting cookbook. This is a really interesting book by a guy called Sam Erskine. Extending reports. There are only so many reports in each System Center product. So if you're going to deploy Virtual Machine Manager to manage your entire virtualization environment, I would actually ask the question first. How are you going to report that it's actually functioning properly? Who you're reporting to, and what do they want to see? Do they want to see SAN forecasting? Do they want to see alerting? So this is kind of an interesting book to get into. So, James, any questions?
Have beers.